Hello, and welcome to the February DAC training for the Spring 2021 Alternate K-Prep Administration. I'm Kevin O'Hare with the Office of Assessment and Accountability's Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. I want to encourage you before we start to check out the handouts that accompany this training, as you will find some very helpful resources as well as guidance documents that will serve useful as we move into the spring administration. Before we jump into the presentation today, I want to share out as a reminder, the decision was made in January to postpone the first testing window for the alternate K-Prep that was scheduled for February 15th, and it was decided to combine the two windows into one large window, allowing us to push the start date out further. There will be one testing window for the alternate K-Prep that begins on March 22nd. As you can see on the slide, testing does not have to begin March 22nd. However, please know that March 22nd is the earliest that testing may begin. The end date and date for score entry have not changed. Those will still be May 28th and June 4th, respectively. The intention behind postponing the window was to allow as much time for instruction as possible. With the impact COVID has had on schools and districts this year, our intention was to grant as much flexibility as we could while still following guidelines set in place at a state and national level. As I shared in the previous slide, please note the message here to visit the folder with handouts for the alternate K-Prep. Another important topic to discuss today are the changes that took effect for the 2020-2021 school year. It was decided over the summer that the Alternate Assessment Accountability Folder, or AAAF, will no longer be required at the state level. The district may continue to use the folder if they choose to, but this is something that KDE will no longer utilize as a monitoring tool. The next change that will be implemented for the 2020-2021 school year is that social studies will now be administered at grade 11. In the past, social studies was administered at grade 12. However, to better align with the general assessments and the results that were collected from a survey conducted in January 2020, the change was made to move social studies from grade 12 to grade 11. Another topic that we saw this year or change was the release of the alternate assessment targets for reading, mathematics, writing, and social studies. I want to emphasize that these are not alternate assessment standards. These are Kentucky academic standards that contain an alternate assessment target. If you're wondering what an alternate assessment target is, that is a limit in depth and breadth to a standard for assessment purposes only. So in other words, these targets just apply to the development of assessment items, how they are going to be portrayed on a test, the ability to take that standard, simplify it for our students while still maintaining alignment. The intention, as it always has been, is to teach the Kentucky academic standards. To learn more about each of these topics we've just discussed, you can click the information on this slide in its live version. It will direct you to the presentation where it was shared in 2020. The announcement around the standards and targets were released for reading and mathematics in May. All other announcements came in a special alternate assessment email on June the 18th. Now, let's talk about non-participations. Non-participation should only be filed if a student has a medical condition that prevents him or her from being assessed. If you have not tuned into the SDRR section that Chris Williams and Pam Powers have recorded, they talk in detail about how to handle medical non-participations and some additional parameters that have been added for medical non-participations since the federal peer review from 2020 did make the request that extraordinary circumstances non-participations no longer be made available in Kentucky. Please note, alternate K-Prep non-participations will be filed in the spring once the rosters open in SDRR. Typically that occurs around the mid part of April. So before we talk about test specifics, we should first talk about who will be expected to test this spring. As we just discussed on slide 4, for medical non-participations, if you have a student who is in person or receiving services but unable to test due to a medical situation, then a medical non-participation may be necessary. However, for those students who are in person and receiving instruction, maybe on school grounds, they would be expected to test as represented here on slide by student A in the example. Student B shows an example of testing in person for the alternate K-Prep off school grounds, where a trained or certified staff or trained or certified test administrator will administer the assessment to them. This can include, but it is not limited to, maybe the public library, the community center, or maybe even at home if they are homebound but still receiving homebound services by a certified test administrator that you see represented here by student C. The last student on slide 5, student D, has not been in school all year. They have had no access to school staff at any point and will remain virtual with no access to school staff throughout the entire testing window. In this situation, testing obviously would not be an option. Those students should be marked in Infinite Campus per your attendance records as based on guidance shared in the SDRR section by Pam Powers and Chris Williams. Your Director of Pupil Personnel can assist in making sure these students are coded correctly within Infinite Campus. The last thing I want to discuss before moving to slide 6 is the guidance documents that the Division of Assessment Accountability Support have created. The 2020-2021 Division of Assessment Accountability Support Assessment Guidance Document and the Participation in Spring 2021 Kentucky State Testing documents are available for more information regarding all testing. These should be accessible in the handouts that are provided with these trainings from the division. Also, concerning all test administrations in person, at school buildings or in home or hospital settings, should be provided while following the guidance on safety expectations and best practices for Kentucky schools and the recommendations of local health departments at the time of testing. Another important highlight to note is the first-time administration of the Quality of School Climate and Safety Survey to alternate assessment students. This survey is a requirement that must be administered to all students. This includes students who participate in the Kentucky Alternate Assessment. There are surveys represented for students at grades 3 through 5 and then grades 6 through high school, designed for students who will be assessed. This means if a student is not in an assessment year, they will not be responsible for completing the survey. The survey for alternate assessment students consists of items detailing school climate, school safety, and new this year is opportunities to learn. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the school climate and the school safety surveys, but the opportunities to learn items are the types of support options or resources students have received for learning during the COVID span. These questions specifically highlight student engagement through instruction, types of learning opportunities that's been provided to them. So this document, when you access it on the website, is going to be a separate document from the school climate and safety survey, as these opportunities to learn are focused on this year, this current time span that we've experienced. When you go into the student registration database and enter this information, as well as accessing it during the testing window, you will see these items broken up into 1 through 5 will be questions around the school climate, 6 through 10 will be questions around school safety, and then questions 11 through 17 will focus on those opportunities to learn. It is critical that we see how students have endured the time in and out of school and the resources they've utilized. So these are very, very beneficial to our students. Every question will have 4 answer options. Those are strongly disagree, disagree, agree, and strongly agree. The 4 answer options are the same as what is provided for students completing the survey for the general assessment. Questions in grades 3 through 5 may differ some than those at grades 6 through high school. One very important point to note is that in high school, only students in grades 10 and 11 will complete the survey. We are aligning the requirements 100% with the general assessment. So if you have students in grades 9, 12, or 14 in the Kentucky alternate assessment, they would not be required to complete this survey. The survey questions can be found on the Kentucky Department of Education's website. You will go to the Assessment Accountability page and select Accountability from the drop-down menu. There you will select Quality of School Climate and Safety. Once that page loads, there will be two documents. One will be specifically for students in grades 3 through 5, and the other for students in grades 6 through high school. The Student Registration Database, or the SRD, will house results from the survey. The results may be entered from March 22nd through June the 4th, which is the last day to enter any type of data into the Student Registration Database. The results from the survey for students participating in the Kentucky Alternate Assessment will be integrated within those results for all students as we encounter during fall reporting. So alternate students will not be separated out, specifically reported. They will be integrated within the entire reporting process, just like the way we do when we report scores, public scores for students with disabilities, how we integrate our alternate students into our counts and student groupings. This will be the same process we'll follow for the collection of the Quality of School Climate and Safety survey. So on slide 8 here, we see the revised testing schedule that has incorporated the most recent decision to postpone the testing window that was originally scheduled for February 15th. And we see that we combined two windows to one and pushed the earliest test date to March 22nd, as we shared earlier. Shown here are the content areas and the number of standards that will be tested within this window, as well as dates specific to not just the test administration, but also score entry. Now, one thing I do want to note is that some standards may be assessed during both windows for reading, writing, mathematics, and social studies. If you will visit the alternate K-Prep page, and you can actually look at the Kentucky Academic Standards link, or that page that's specific to the alternate K-Prep, and there will be information that was shared out actually back in May and June of 2020 that highlighted the distribution of those standards and those alternate assessment targets. And at that point, we were still focused on assessing two windows. So they were broken down into Windows 1 and Windows 2. We have to follow that same format. And so the decision will be to assess all of those standards and all of those, or for assessment purposes, those alternate assessment targets. And those are really non-negotiable because they are set into place based upon our elementary and secondary education regulations, as well as our IDEA federal guidance. So that's the reason behind the administration and the ability to administer it in its entirety. There really is no flexibility in that sense. Our goal, once again, is to try to provide as many opportunities as we can to allow our schools and our districts to assess those students who are going to be there with them during this testing window, and to be as flexible as we possibly can. So attainment tasks will continue to be sent to schools and districts in the standard binders that have been processed over the past several years. An important note that has been shared as part of the guidance document in the handouts: the task will still be presented as task A through Z in the binder, and tasks D through F are shrink wrapped, as we have seen in prior testing assessment windows. So during the week of March 16th through 19th, schools will receive a full set of materials, and those will come 3 through 5 for elementary, 6 through 8 for middle school, and 10 through 11 for high school. Now, we do understand that some school grade spans, the way that they're broken up, might be a little different than what we have, what we typically share our materials out through. And if that's the case, at the district, the DAC or the BAC, can share those materials with that school based upon their grade range. But we follow the standard state grade span rollout of 3 through 5 representing elementary, 6 through 8 for middle, and 10 and 11 for high school. As we have always shared, copies of those original tasks can be made in order to adapt the materials to meet the needs of the individual student. You know, we do ask that test security always be a priority when these adaptations are being made, but any test administrator has to go through the administration code as well as the inclusions of special populations training, where it focuses specifically in the administration code on that test security and its importance. So we ask that that process always is maintained, but then also we want to give the opportunity for the students to be able to receive the test in a way that they are comfortable with and that it's beneficial to them. So the Transition Attainment Record, the TAR, is administered at grade 11. It is designed to meet the assessment requirements for the ACT that is provided at grade 11. The TAR training opened on October 5th, and it will remain open until May the 28th. Only one member from the Admissions Release Committee, the ARC, or transition team is required to complete the training. Once the quiz has been completed, the TAR is available for print or download and completed by the team. So benchmarks for the TAR are as provided at reading. The benchmark is 19 out of a possible 30. The benchmark for mathematics is a 16 out of a possible 24. And the benchmark for science is a 16 out of a possible 24. The TAR scores are housed in the student registration database. And the TAR is the assessment provided for alternate students completing the academic portion of the post-secondary readiness indicator. So when we talk about the post-secondary readiness and we think about the application for our alternate students, the TAR meets that academic readiness or the academic portion of that post-secondary readiness indicator. So by meeting those benchmarks, that's how it will apply to our alternate students. The TAR is also available for students at grades 12 and 14. Again, it is available, but not required at grades 12 and 14, where it would be required at grade 11. Students who will take the TAR at grades 12 and 14 must be registered by the district in the student registration database. Guidance on how to register students can be found in the SRD for DAC's PowerPoint that's provided in the handouts that accompany this training. So the DAC PowerPoint, the SRD for DAC's PowerPoint, specifically on slide 7, shows you how to complete that registration process. It literally will take you probably 30 seconds at most to register a grade 12 or a grade 14 student. One thing I do want to note, I've been getting questions about what about students who were grade 11 last year? Are they required to take the TAR at grade 12 this year? Once again, as we noted, the TAR is not required at grade 12. So last year where the assessment was waived, then that meant that those requirements at that grade were also waived. So the student is eligible to take it at grade 12 if you want to try to meet those benchmarks for the post-secondary readiness indicator. Absolutely, it's available at grade 12, but it is not mandatory. So the online training system, or OTS, and the student registration database that we've talked about, the SRD, are both components of the Kentucky Alternate Assessment Systems page that also includes the career readiness database. And so that's for all of you that are familiar with the post-secondary readiness indicator. That's the other side of the TAR represents the academic readiness, and the career readiness, which is the employability skills attainment record, and the career work experience certifications. Those are also scores that are housed in through the career readiness database, which is part of that entire Kentucky Alternate Assessment Systems page. Now, the OTS, the online training system, is the location where teachers, they go in and take their quizzes. District level administrators who have those rights at the district level are able to view who has completed their quizzes, identified who is registered in the system, in very important details such as this. They can monitor that process. The SRD is just for score entry. So all attainment task scores, the TAR scores, and the Quality of School Climate and Safety Survey are housed in the student registration database. This system, if you'll recall, was revamped back based upon new state and federal security protocols back in the fall. So on September 8th, to be specific, in a Monday DAC email, information was shared out around updating the online training system and requiring everybody to register again based upon those security protocols that had been put into place. That same email was also shared out through a special alternate assessment email on September the 11th. So copies of the seating chart for alternate assessment students will again be received with the materials. They are located in the back of each school or district binder. So in that binder that you'll receive, where tasks A through C, remember, will be placed. In the back of that binder will be the location for seating charts. A chart should be completed for each school and then returned to the BAC or DAC to keep on record. Now, if you recall, as we provided in the past, you can have multiple students on one chart form, just as long as you specifically note where the assessment, that one-on-one administration occurred with that particular student. And then, as noted here, you'll want to make sure that at the conclusion of the testing window, that those seating charts make their way back to the building or the district assessment coordinator. And that's based upon how the district chooses to maintain those documents. So the process for materials after testing remains consistent in the fact that no paper materials will ship back from the district. The University of Kentucky, our vendor for the alternate K-Prep, will ask that USB drives, or you may refer to them as thumb drives, flash drives, but USB drives with animations linked to the specific content areas will need to come back. UK will send guidance for shipping back the USB drives and the test materials when they arrive the week of March 16th through the 19th. So those are things that you'll see specifically in those directions when you get those materials, is how that the USB drives would need to be provided back to UK. All materials should remain intact until the end of the school year, until the school year has ended. As you're well aware, as we've talked about several times through this training, the school year will actually conclude as the testing window wraps up. So we ask that all materials remain intact together until the school year has ended, and then we'll follow that same process as we have in the past. Test administrators will need to make sure that those materials go back to their BAC, or whoever is responsible for collecting those materials in your district. Could be a district alternate assessment coordinator or someone that works specifically in that role, or it could be the DAC that comes in, or the DOS that comes and collects those materials. However that process is in your district, your school and district, that's the process that you should continue to maintain. Once those materials are returned, then the DAC or whoever maintains charge of the program would then be responsible for making sure that these materials are securely destroyed. Now, as you saw on slide 3, we have shared throughout the summer and the past fall, the Alternate Assessment Accountability Folder, AAAF, will no longer be required at the state level. At this time, the intent for the alternate K-Prep is to monitor virtually in the same manner as the general assessment. So what that means is schools and districts will be selected randomly, and all questions and interviews this year will be conducted virtually. There will be no on-site visits. Specific details around this process will be shared closer to the time of the specific testing windows. For districts, monitoring for the alternate K-Prep is encouraged, but it's not required. The type of monitoring is completely up to the district or the school on how they choose to complete that process. So that's something that is determined internally, how the district and the school choose to monitor if they do so. We do want to make note that the districts may continue to utilize the AAAF information if they choose to. Now, again, it's not a requirement at the state, but that information is still posted on the alternate KPREP page if districts would choose to continue use of those documents. That is completely a district decision. This slide shows the newly revised dates for the spring 2021 administration. Originally, the last day to complete the online combined overview attainment task training and quiz had been February the 10th. That date has been pushed back to March 1st. Materials will arrive in districts the week of March 16th through the 19th, with testing available to begin on March 22nd. Again, testing does not have to start on March 22nd, but it must end by May 28th. The last day to enter scores in the student registration database will be June the 4th. These updated dates have also been revised and placed in the alternate KPREP handouts that accompany this training. That folder, as that revised calendar has been shared there. So this concludes today's training on the alternate KPREP for the 2021 spring administration. If you have any questions, please join us on one of the upcoming question and answer sessions that will be provided by the Division of Assessment Accountability Support. We encourage you to watch for upcoming information provided through via a Monday DAC email, or it could even come through a special DAC email for specific access to these sessions. So I'm sure that as we get closer to those times, that additional information will be shared out. You can also contact myself, Kevin O'Hare, by email, or you may email dacinfo@education.ky.gov. If you would rather call, that number is 502-564-4394. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for all that you have done and everything that you continue to do for our students each and every day. We appreciate you and support you very much. Thanks again and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.